What's up, y'all, and welcome to another installment of the For the Gram podcast. This is a show where I, Jaksyn, your host, am going to take you through a topic of interest to me, whether that's something new happening in the world lately, some sort of hip trend, something popular in the mainstream media, but in the end, it's going to be relevant enough for the gram. This week's episode, I think it was a big weekend. It was just Thanksgiving a little while ago. And there was a big surge in people going to the movies, right? So there was a good release of family-friendly movies this year for Thanksgiving. And so it was a big box office weekend for a lot of cinemas. So Gladiator 2 was out. I saw that. And then Moana 2 came out that same week. I saw that too. But the big ticket item was undoubtedly Wicked, which was a movie adaptation of a stage show that I love so much, which is a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, the beloved 1930s movie starring Judy Garland, who is famously from Minnesota. Anywho, it was a really big weekend for the box office because they had so many different blockbuster movies. And so, did I partake in seeing all three of them? Yes, I did. And it was an interesting phenomenon because I haven't seen so many people at the theater in a really long time. We went to see Moana 2, and that was sold out, and we went to see Wicked, and that was sold out, and then I went to see Gladiator 2, and that wasn't sold out, but that was because it was way early in the morning. I should not have been going to see a movie at that point. But the box office numbers for this year's Thanksgiving was just over $50 million, which is more than 2 times as much as it was last year. It hasn't nearly been that high since 2018, which in 2018 it was $41 million made in the box office, and even then that wasn't even that high since 2009. So box office numbers on Thanksgiving is not necessarily a movie holiday, but everybody's home and there's not a lot to do with your family, so you want to go see a movie. And so the box office numbers this year skyrocketed about 149% of what last year's was, but I get it. It was just out of COVID a little while ago, and not a lot of people wanted to go see movies. But it was a crazy big weekend, and I saw 3 movies in the span of 4 days, which was probably the most I've been to the theater in a little while. And so it begs the question, it's like, what was so appealing about this year's films that brought in all these box office numbers? And I think it's the family-friendly element of all of it. Gladiator 2 wasn't necessarily the most family-friendly of movies that they could have had this weekend, but Moana 2 definitely was, and Wicked, parts of it definitely were. And so it's an interesting thing to look at in the grand scheme of when production studios are going to release their movies is, are they going to do it in a weekend when families can go see it together? And that's just a really cool thing. In my mind, movies have 2 sort of like genres that they fall into, more like styles, if you will. The interesting thing, though, is I like movies, if you couldn't tell, and I like both of these styles. The 2 styles I'm referring to are realism and surrealism. Realism is when it's like a slice of life, and it's like you could imagine yourself being there watching this thing happen. It's sort of like a real element to it, hence the name realism. But then there's surrealism, which is when you take a movie with an outrageous concept and you make it kind of otherworldly, if you will. And those are very different because a lot of the times they're not what we expect them to be. I would think that um, musicals fit into surrealism really, really well because they're not what reality looks like a lot of the time. A lot of the time, it's people singing and dancing, and that's out of character. People don't normally like to see that. But I think there's an element of that we breeze past just a little bit. Like movie adaptations of plays are very, very interesting to me because it kind of just puts you back to what the first type of visual storytelling was, and that was acting and plays and theater. And so what you do is you take theater and you put it in a realistic format, and that is a movie. And it's like very visual, and a lot of plays can be realistic. But I think that movies elevate that to a whole other level. It's like take hidden camera TV shows, for example. Like part of what makes those good is the spontaneous nature of real life. In movies, you see a lot of precision and long days of work that culminate into a 1 20-second take or something like that. And that's fine. Like, I enjoy that. But there's nothing that strikes me more than a musical where anything can happen from night to night, or a play where something different is said the night before and people forget their lines and all that sort of stuff. So you don't really get that with movies. But what I liked about Wicked was a culmination of what I love about film and what I love about the theater, right? Because theater is a very specific corner of the universe, and I love it, and not everybody does. And I understand that. But I liked how with this movie, they took some of the things that I loved from watching the stage show live, and they made them more of a reality, per se, in the film. And that was a super, super cool thing for me to see. Like, I saw it, and I've been a Wicked fan for probably 9-10 years now, and it still was like mind-blowing to me to see it on the big screen. And then I know people who have either just heard about it briefly or have never bothered to know about Wicked or anything like that, and they saw the movie and they thought it was really good too. So it's like you really never know in that regard, but I think Wicked does a really, really good job of making a movie that is a mixture, an amalgamation, if you will, of two of the mediums that I love so much. And so it was really, really cool to see that. If you don't know the story of Wicked at all, I'm going to give you a brief synopsis really quick because the movie's still out, and I think everybody should go and see this movie. This movie is phenomenal. Depending on when you listen to this, the movie is still out. But Wicked is a prequel to the beloved Wizard of Oz story, and it takes a deeper dive into the witches storyline, right? So the Wicked Witch of the West is the villain of the Wizard of Oz movie. Notably, there's another villain, but we can talk about that in a little bit. The story of Wicked follows the Wicked Witch of the West. Her name is Elphaba with an E, and she grows up in Munchkin Land with her sister Nessa Rose, and she's green. And her whole life, she doesn't know why she's green, but she knows that she just has to live with it. So every time she meets somebody in the show, she immediately is like, okay, so I'm going to answer all of your questions about me being green, and none of them are correct. And so we'll just get that out of the way. So, story follows Elphaba, right? And then she goes on to meet, she goes to this school called Shiz University. And that's where you go to learn all of these magical things in Oz, right? And Elphaba has always had a magical gift. And she doesn't know how to control it. She doesn't know why it's happening. But she's going to this school to hopefully forget about that, and just kind of help her sister Nessa Rose through the whole like school life, because Nessa is in a wheelchair, and she knows that she's capable of doing things on her own, but she still wants to be there. And her dad, the mayor of Munchkinland, he's like, you best look out for her. And so she does that. And while they're at Shiz University, they meet Galinda, who is Glinda the Good Witch of the North, I believe, from The Wizard of Oz. And so she's all decked out in pink, and everybody else is decked out in blue, or Elphaba's black. And so it's like you instantly recognize her as being the Good Witch of the North from The Wizard of Oz. And so it follows their adventures at school, and they do a whole little thing, and then Elphaba manages to do all of this magic that impresses Madame Morrible, who is the sorcery professor at the college or at the university or whatever you want to call it. And so she takes Elphaba in for private lessons, and they go and do that stuff. And then her abilities are quickly made known to the great and powerful Wizard of Oz, who invites Elphaba and her magic, most likely, to Oz to come meet him. And so Galinda and Elphaba start off not liking each other at all. So there's a whole little fiasco that goes on. But there's a character named Fiyero, who is a guy who thinks books and reading is like studying is like not what you're supposed to do at a university. He's the party guy. And so Galinda instantly falls for him, and I think Elphaba also kind of does for a little bit, at least in Act 1. And then there's a character named Bach who follows Elphaba and Nessa Rose from Munchkinland, and Bach is obsessed with Galinda. And so while they're at they're prepping for a big dance in this like season during university or whatever. And so Galinda asks Fiyero, and Fiyero is going with Galinda. But Bach is not okay with that. He's like, I want to go with Galinda, so I'm going to step to this guy. And what Galinda does is she says, you would be my hero if you asked Nessa Rose to go with you to this dance. And Bach goes, oh, I'll do anything for you, Galinda. And so he does. And he asks Nessa Rose to go to the dance with him, and she's so happy. And she goes to tell Elphaba that she's like, hey, so Galinda told Bach to come and ask me to the dance, and I can't be happier. I just want to go with this guy. And so Elphaba's like, okay, Galinda might not actually be as bad as I think she is, because she helped my sister, and so I'm going to help her out a little bit. And so she includes Galinda in on her private sorcery lessons, because all Galinda wants to do is be a sorceress, be a witch. And so Elphaba and Galinda are like working on their lessons together, and so they have like all of 3 classes at this university, one of which is taught by Dr. Dillamond, who is a goat person, and there's a lot of things with that storyline too, because there's this whole thing going around in Oz. They're like, we're going to put animals in cages and they're not going to learn to speak anymore. And so Dr. Dillamond is, of course, an animals rights activist because he's an animal. And so he gets taken away and they're like, that's not okay. And then that's around the time where Elphaba gets called to Oz, called to the Emerald City by the Wizard of Oz. And so her and Galinda end up going to the Emerald City, and then they get there, and then they realize, from spoilers from the original Wizard of Oz, if you haven't seen it somehow, it's been almost 100 years, but anyway, if you don't want to hear about this, skip ahead like 2 minutes. It'll be okay. But when they get to the Emerald City, Elphaba learns that the wizard is a fraud. Oh no, he's not actually a wizard. He can't do magic at all. He's just building all these machines that make it look like he's magical, but he's really not. He's just an engineer, basically. And so they are like, we got to get out of here. We can't be seen with this dude. We got to tell everybody that he's not what he says he is and stuff like that. And so Elphaba is told that the monkey guards, they just watch the birds all day and they just would love to fly like these birds. And so she casts a flying spell on these monkeys, and that gives them wings and makes the flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz. And so she releases them after she gives them wings, because the wings hurt the monkeys and they don't like to have the wings, even though the wizard said that they did. And so she releases all the monkeys, and then Elphaba and Galinda, they try to escape. And so Elphaba casts the flying spell that she cast on the monkeys on a broomstick that she finds in this upper room in the Emerald City Palace. And so what she does is she uses the broomstick to fly away from Oz to go in the western area, and hence being known as the Wicked Witch of the West. And now everybody is like, oh my goodness, Elphaba is the worst. She made all these monkeys have wings, and they didn't want to have wings in the first place, and she stole the book of spells that the wizard has, so he can't cast any more spells. It's a whole thing. And then she sings Defying Gravity, and that's the end of the first act, which is the movie. That's just a little synopsis of the first act of Wicked. And so there's a whole lot more, and I love talking about Wicked. There's Act 2 as well, which is being made into the second part of the Wicked movie, and so we don't get to see that for another year, and I'm really, really sad. But I really liked the movie. I thought it was wonderfully made. It was a little long, though. It was just a tad bit long. They never took anything out from the original Broadway show, so that was cool, but they didn't, keep it to that either. They added a little bit of stuff just for people who had never seen the show before to just kind of give them a little added insight. But on that note, it's like movie musicals are insane. Like, Wicked just passed Grease as the highest grossing movie musical of all time. I think it has a shot at the box office record. I think it's going to be doing really, really well, especially if they re-release it before Wicked Part 2 in order to watch the whole thing. If I had a 4-hour cut of both of them together, I would have just watched both of them together. I don't care. I really, really like this show, and I think everybody else should too, because it's a super, super good original prequel to a story that I never thought I would need more from in The Wizard of Oz. And so when I say movie musicals, the first thing that comes to mind is like the ones that I grew up with like The Wizard of Oz and Mary Poppins and Sound of Music and all of those musicals. I don't think of, say, Newsies, who has a staged version of the Broadway show that they filmed and released to the public. I don't consider that a movie musical. I consider the Christian Bale version of Disney's Newsies, I consider that a movie musical. I don't consider Hamilton a movie musical because it was a musical that they streamed and recorded, and I would not necessarily consider that a movie musical. I would consider that a musical movie, but not a movie musical. And not everything that has singing in it is a movie musical, but a lot of the times they are. Two guys that come to mind when I think of modern movie musicals are my favorite composer duo of Jaksyn Paul and Benji Pasek. And they have been really hot recently. They've been releasing smash hit after smash hit after smash hit. Their most recent being Spirited, I think. The Ryan Reynolds, Will Ferrell Christmas movie musical, which I loved the songs. And, no, I think their most recent one was Lyle Lyle Crocodile. That was a trip of a movie. I didn't know how to feel about that. But they're these guys who make cinematic musicals. And so if you don't like musicals, and you like movies, I would highly recommend checking out one of their filmography, which I'll talk about a little more in a second. But they just did Spirited, which is like all original songs, and I love them so much. I like the soundtrack for it, but the movie was not great. I will say that. The movie suffered a little bit from, I don't want to watch 70-year-old Will Ferrell dancing in a musical. Like, that's just not what I'm there for, and I think that's fine. But when I think of a musical of theirs that I really, really like, I think of The Greatest Showman, which is a movie that came out in 2017, I believe. Maybe late 2016, early 2017. But The Greatest Showman is one of the go-to movies that I would show somebody if they say they don't like musicals. Because The Greatest Showman uses the music for the narrative, as well as them breaking into song all the time and stuff like that. But the music is super, super catchy. Like, it gets stuck in your head a lot. But, like, it's the story of P.T. Barnum, Phineas Taylor Barnum, the guy who started the Barnum Bailey Circus. And he started it as a freak show, basically, is what they called it back then. And so it dives into that a little bit, except I love Hugh Jackman. I love him. He's great. But I like the version of his character better than the reality of P.T. Barnum, because P.T. Barnum was not a nice person, like, at all. And Hugh Jackman makes him look like this great guy. He was not a nice person. I think it's fine, the direction that they went with it, but the music, phenomenal. Could not be better. The set design, beautiful. The cinematography is also really, really good. So if you like movies but don't really know about musicals, I would highly recommend The Greatest Showman. It's a Pasek and Paul soundtrack. It's so good. Like, I've probably watched it 3 times this year alone, and that's just because it's a really, really good movie. I like it a lot. And then another one of theirs was, it originally started out as a stage show, and then they made it into a movie. And that, of course, is Dear Evan Hansen, which the stage show, I would have loved to see that. But the movie was a little weird. Like, the music is still phenomenal. It's like, it's full of bops, and I love it. And these ones are sad bops, but they're still good. Like, I still listen to them on repeat all the time. But it deals with real things. And so it's hard to, like, I loved Ben Platt when he was in it on Broadway, but I feel like they should have casted someone younger to play Evan Hansen in the movie, because he just looked so much older than everybody in the movie, and he's supposed to be a 16-year-old kid, and that just didn't really show up as much. But like that movie, oh my goodness, that movie gave me chills. Like, I love the music from that movie so much that I was like willing to forgive it for being kind of a crappy movie. And so it's like, even me, someone who loves movie musicals, I have my gripes with them as well. So it's like, I definitely understand where people are coming from when they say they don't like movie musicals, but I think people should at least give them a chance. Like, there are some really, really good ones. Like, another Pasek and Paul one. I hate to keep dropping Pasek and Paul ones. No, I don't. That's a lie. But my favorite movie musical is La La Land, which came out in, I believe, 2015. I believe. I don't remember exactly. It was the year after Whiplash came out. But La La Land is a Damien Chazelle movie with a Pasek and Paul score, Pasek and Paul soundtrack. And it's about two people wanting to live out their dreams in Los Angeles, played by Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, who they were the main leads of the movie. But what was I gonna say? I was gonna say a thing. It was an interesting phenomenon because they picked the actors who were not necessarily known for being singers. They picked the actors for the look. They just got an added bonus that they could sing. But I love this movie. The color in this movie is beautiful. Oh my goodness. They pay so much attention to color and standing out in a crowd and being unique in a sea of people that look exactly like you, because Emma Stone's character is an actress, or an attempted actress, and so it's like she constantly is being compared to other people in an audition room, and she's like she's finally had enough of it, and that's the climax of the movie, and it's so good. But this is the definition of a surrealist film, because it's based in reality, but there's a element to it that does not fit with the real world, if that makes sense. John Legend is in this movie, and the Ryan Gosling's character Sebastian, he just wants to be a jazz musician, but not the new jazz that they're coming up with in LA. He wants to be an old jazz musician. He wants to glorify the jazz singers of the 60s and 70s, and it's hard to do if you're a white man. Hate to say it, but Ryan Gosling, he did really well in that movie as that character, and he is probably one of my favorite parts of the movie is when he blares on his horn, and that's like their little thing between me and Sebastian, is that he blares on his horn for her, because it was a little throwaway gag at the beginning, And the ending of this movie, oh my goodness. If you want a controversial film topic, like, watch the ending of La La Land, but you've got to watch the whole thing. Watch the whole thing. Just watch La La Land, and then when you get to the ending of it, it's a super, super controversial film topic, but I love it. I love the way it ended. A lot of people don't. And if you have watched La La Land, let me know, and we can talk about it, because I love talking about the ending of La La Land. Another thing is that La La Land has songs that, like, I wouldn't normally listen to, but I love them. Like, they're so good, and they embody the jazz atmosphere in LA. It's a love letter to LA, basically, and I love it so much. And it's like watching it as someone who wanted to be an actor for a lot of their life, seeing that side of things. Like, it's the same with I'll get to Tick Tick Boom in a second, but it's the same with that. It's, you see the side of these creatives that you only ever hear about. You never really get to see some of these things happen. Like John Krasinski, who played Jim Halpert in The Office, he said that he went to New York for 3 years, and his mom said before he moved out there, give it 3 years, and then if you don't get anything, you have to pull yourself out, because as your parents, we can't tell you to give up on your dreams. And that resonates with me so much. And he's like, in about 2.5 years, he called his mom and said, come get me. I'm like, acting is the worst. And then 2 months later, he got The Office. And so sometimes you just gotta wait it out a little bit. It is a waiting game, acting, and it's crazy. You got to be crazy committed to do it. But I think that's a really interesting side that La La Land brings. And if you haven't seen La La Land, please watch it. You will not regret it. It is one of my favorite movie musicals. Even if you're not a musical person, I would watch La La Land, because if you're not a musical person and you're a film person, there will be a reason for you to watch it. If you're not a musical person and you're a rom-com person, even more of a reason for you to watch it. If you're not a musical person but you like Ryan Gosling, or if you like Emma Stone, both of them do phenomenal in this movie. So I cannot recommend it enough to watch this movie. And so, yeah, I'm extremely excited for the movie musical genre if we get more like Wicked. And oh my goodness, I haven't even talked about Tick Tick Boom. Tick Tick Boom is a musical about the life of playwright and composer Jonathan Larson, who is famous for the musicals Tick Tick Boom. And if you ever heard of Rent, that is a Jonathan Larson musical. But Rent is more about his life, but Tick Tick Boom is the most about his life. And so it's like, Rent is like slightly based off of it, but Tick Tick Boom is like using the actual characters of his friends and things like that, because he wrote it as a monologue series. So what a monologue is just a long speech, basically, but it's through song for Tick Tick Boom. If you know what stand-up comedians do, that's basically a monologue. And Tick Tick Boom is on Netflix, and it's starring Andrew Garfield, and oh my goodness, I love this movie too. But not just because it's a musical, but because it shows the other side of show business. Like, you hear a lot of times about the successes and everybody like making it big and all that sort of stuff. That's like the hope for show business. But Tick Tick Boom shows the other side of it. You 90% of the time are riding on the subway, or you're working a diner job because you can't afford to pay your bills, and your power is being shut off, and your water is being shut off, and all that sort of stuff. And it's insane, some of the stuff that these people go through before they hit it big. And I love seeing that side of it too. And so that's why I think La La Land and Tick Tick Boom are some of my favorite movie musicals. Tick Tick Boom is not a Pasek and Paul soundtrack, unfortunately. I wish it was. It's directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. His film directing debut is Tick Tick Boom. So if you like Lin-Manuel Miranda's style and stuff like that, I feel like you'd like Tick Tick Boom on top of that. But the songs in Tick Tick Boom are also super, super catchy. And there is some swearing in it and adult topics. But they're relevant to the time in which it was written. And so I think it's justified, but I I love all of these musicals so much. Like, I love Dear Evan Hansen, even though the movie was kind of garbage. Like, the movie was not good, but the show itself was enough for me. I liked the show, and I wasn't able to let that reputation be tarnished by a film version. And I think that's some of the things that you have to sacrifice as a film person who likes theater, is that you have to sacrifice some of the live theatrical elements that you won't necessarily see in a film, and you have to sacrifice sometimes that the film is going to be better than the stage show, or the stage show is going to be better than the film, and like, you never really know what's going to happen. And I hate that you have to deal with that in media. Like, you never know how something is going to translate to a certain form. But I think if movie musicals in the past couple years have looked this good, I'm excited to see where they go from here. Because another thing about Wicked is all of the sets are practical, except for a couple. Like, they built 85% of the sets. They planted 9 million flowers outside of Munchkinland. Like, it was Interstellar's cornfield to a whole nother level. And I think that just makes the movie even better in my mind, because they're like building sets. They're like going back to their theater roots. Like, a lot of the times in the industry, you hear that movie actors do their movies so then they can go back and act on the stage again, because acting on the stage does not pay you a lot of money. But like, you see it a lot now. Like, Denzel Washington did Fences. Hugh Jackman just finished Music Man. Josh Groban, I know he's not an actor, but Josh Groban just finished Sweeney Todd, which is a show that he's been wanting to do forever, and I wanted to see it so bad. I wish I could have seen Josh Groban as Sweeney Todd. But they do movies and like music stuff just so they can earn enough money to do theater as a career and feel good about that. And I love that. I think that's super, super fun. And you get to see them kind of living in their element, which is really, really cool. But with that all being said, I think I'm going to hop into this week's edition of 3 Things You Need to Know. Number 1, the McRib is back. I hate to say it, it's back. There's been a resurgence of people on the internet being like, why is the McRib back? They said the farewell tour was 2 years ago. I think I'm McRibbed out, honestly. I hate to say it. The McRib is one of those things that it's only good because you can only buy it at a certain time during the year. And so it suffers from the seasonal food effect. And I think the McRib actually I think the McRib actually coined the phrase the McRib effect, and that's when something is a seasonal food at a fast food restaurant and everybody flocks to it. And I don't know why that is. I think everybody's just like, "Oh my gosh, I want this." But I think I read somewhere that the only reason the McRib ever comes back is if pork is a manageable price per pound for McDonald's to actually make a profit off of it. Because, like, the McRib is disgusting. Like, everybody who eats the McRib knows that it's disgusting. But it's the fact that you can just, like, enjoy it as much as you had in years past and just still like it. That's what does it for people who like the McRib. And so the McRib is back. It's at participating McDonald's. So if you want a McRib, by all means, go for it. One of my friends ate way too many McRibs last year, and he said he was never going to eat them again. Sure enough, first day it was back, he bought one. And I was really disappointed in him. But it's okay. It's whatever. Number 2, the Notre Dame Cathedral is reopening 5 years after its tragic fire in 2020. So 2020 was a crazy year. Like, there's a lot of things that happened. One of which, the Notre Dame Cathedral caught fire, and it was insane. And so what do? They put out the fire and they start rebuilding it. And now, 5 years later, they're going to open it back up again. And you have to buy tickets to go into the Notre Dame Cathedral. I never knew that. I just thought it was just a church and they like hold mass at the church or something like that. Apparently you have to buy tickets to like go and like be inside the cathedral. But that's just a little interesting tidbit that I saw the other day, that the Notre Dame Cathedral, it's been 5 years, but they're finally done fixing it. And hopefully it's fireproof now. We never know. Old buildings like those, like, I never know how they can still stay standing. And then, like, I thought we were witnessing, like, a disaster. Like, the Notre Dame Cathedral burning down, that would be insane. It didn't burn down all the way. It just caught fire a little bit. And then they put it out, and then they rebuilt it. And that was super, super cool. Number 3. Marine biologists have found the world's largest living thing on the planet. And it's not an animal. It's not a human. It is a piece of coral. Yeah, that's right. Coral is living. You didn't know it, now you do, I guess. You're welcome for that. But there's a piece of coral just off the coast of Australia that is 34 by 32 meters, which I don't know what that means, because I work in the imperial system where we work on inches and feet and all that sort of stuff. So I don't really know what 34 meters is. I think it's like 112 feet, which in terms of American measurements, that's probably about 37 yards. So it's shorter than a 40-yard dash, but it is a massive piece of coral. If you looked at a 37-foot hunk of coral and was not like that coral's huge, then I don't know what you're doing. Like that it's insane. And so it's like, it's crazy to think about that the largest living thing on our planet is not like a whale or something. Like, I feel like whales are also that big, but I guess whales aren't 37 yards long. That would be a massive whale. If you saw a 37-yard whale just burrowing towards you, that would be so scary. Like, I don't even know. Like, what is the average length of a whale? It's got to be like 30 feet. So it's got to be pretty dang close to that. But I mean, I never really thought of it like that. So it's just slightly bigger than a whale, I guess. I don't know. Like, Now that I'm like thinking about it out loud, like you never realize how long whales are until you compare it with a piece of coral that's longer than it. Like, I don't know. But anyway, that's going to do it for this week's installment of For the Gram. If you guys liked what you heard, feel free to follow me on Instagram. I'm at forthegrahampod, all lowercases, no spaces. And if you have any feedback on the show whatsoever, if you have any interesting movie musical recommendations or just stage musical recommendations, you can feel free to send me an email at forthegrahampod@gmail.com. But that's all I got for you guys this week, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.